Alright, welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker, and here we are about to discuss Turmoil, Trade, and Infamy in the Advanced Country Guide for Afghanistan for the Open Beta 1.2 for Victoria 3. So they've made some really significant changes in regards to one thing in particular, Turmoil. And so I think that talking about Turmoil and then talking about the cascading effects for Infamy and for Trade are useful. The majority of this video is probably going to be a discussion about trade just because I do still think that it is largely misunderstood, but this change to Turmoil is a big deal. So Turmoil, where does it come from? How do you deal with it? In 1.0 and 1.1, the way that you dealt with Turmoil was just incorporate everything, get a police state in place, and deal with radicals that way. That was generally pretty effective, but they've made it so that Turmoil now has a state construction efficiency scalable problem that goes along with it. And so what that means is conquering territories when you're over 100 infamy is way less economically productive. When you conquer territory, you get radicals in that territory from being conquered by a foreign country. And you can see that right here on our map, right? There's a bunch of radicals in the 4 states that we've conquered. But as your infamy goes up and you hit specific ranks in your infamy, which we haven't hit, but now you do need to be aware of this, at certain ranks of infamy, you're going to be getting even more radicals from Conquest, and unless they've rebalanced it at 100 infamy, you're getting 100% radicals from Conquest, which means that the areas that you're going to be conquering with massive amounts of turmoil are going to be accomplishing basically nothing for you. And so you need to be way more cognizant about how you generate your turmoil and deal with your turmoil and deal with your infamy and plan your expansion in Victoria 3 than ever before. One way, of course, to help modify the creation of radicals is your citizenship laws and your church and state laws, or these are going to give you fewer radicals from standard of living decreases and extra loyalists from standard of living increases. But generally speaking, it's going to be a little trickier to just conquer things and build stuff, because keep in mind that if you're going to be trying to deal with your turmoil, you need to incorporate it, or you need to just build all of the radicals away. Before they introduced the state construction efficiency, if you conquered a territory and you didn't want to core it, it generally wasn't that big a deal because you would just go in there and just build a bunch of stuff, get all of their peasants happy, get all of their unemployed happy, and then wham bam, you're done, right? You've cleaned everything up, no more radicals. But because of this construction efficiency penalty, now you kind of need a road maintenance in place. Now you also need to just be careful generally about when you conquer things at 100 infamy. And so what that means is you do need to understand that your infamy is scalable off of your rank. I'm going to link to the Vicky wiki down below, but basically infamy is going to be generated from some specific things now. So it's going to be modified just as it was in 1.0 and 1.1. Your rank is going to modify the amount of infamy that you generate, both your rank as well as the rank of your target. But they've also rebalanced return state. Now it's way better in terms of its infamy. And so I think that that's an indirect serious buff to the Ottoman Empire, because you really do actually care about infamy now. Like, if you're conquering stuff that you can't build in, and you're not really intending on incorporating anytime soon, or you just don't have police in place yet, then it's going to be pretty useless land for quite some time. You're mostly just conquering the pops and hope that they move to the rest of your empire. But as I prefaced, I think the majority of this video is going to be a conversation about trade, especially because trade is also enormously different in Victoria 3. And trade is also connected to infamy, of course, because the more infamy you have, the worse relations you'll have with a bunch of different powers, the more likely they will be to embargo you. And so managing your infamy in regards to trade is going to be really important. But your trade is, I think, one of the most important tools now in the game in Victoria 3. I think it's always been really important, but it's been kind of undersung. It's also been undercut by, until very recently, your inability to interact with trade as a subject. But that is no longer the case. So here we're playing as Afghanistan. We were independent for quite some time. I think we joined the British Union about 2 years ago, but we did conquer Tajikistan and Pashtunistan before then, and then we joined the British market as a protectorate, and we conquered Baluchistan and Sistan from Persia. And we did that via utilizing their resources, but we were only able to utilize those resources because we built up a good relationship with them with a high volume of trade routes between us. And then with that high volume of trade routes between us, the British were willing to join us in a trade agreement that helped save us in terms of our bureaucracy. And it also just dramatically expanded our GDP. So you'll see that like right here, that's where we joined the British as a protectorate. But right here is when we started just trading outrageously with the British. That was the really big unlock for us, that we had access to free trade, and now trade routes, two big changes. A, if you have a land connection or a land connection in your market, you no longer need convoys. That just uses your land convoy routes. And B, as a subject, you can control trade routes. So here as Afghanistan, while we're not going to be able to build up an agrarian economy due to the relative inaccessibility of agricultural land, we are going to be able to build up a nice little industrial economy, but also a portage economy. We can build up an economy that relies on just moving the goods of the British Empire around in the world. Now, mind you, that's an extremely parasitic economy, and it'll make it very difficult for Afghanistan to leave. But in the meantime, we can use it to just dramatically expand the employment and power of our trade centers here in Afghanistan without investing, again, any construction points. Because our economy is still pretty small, right? We're only at 9 million right now. That's some pretty serious growth in 15 years. But we're still pretty small. But all the time, we're going to be able to utilize trade routes and bureaucracy and convoys, and most importantly, just the shipping connections of the British market, which I guess now includes a Portuguese dominion. And so I want to leave you with two notes in regards to trade in 1.2. First, this change, it applies also to the ability to control tariffs. The only reason that we can't control tariffs now is that we are in free trade. But this means that as a subject, you can actually use corn laws now. You just have to be able to set your tariffs to exports, and subjects can do that. But it also means that there's an entirely new playstyle available to you. If you want to play a big shipping country, you absolutely can. You can specialize in the import and export of goods in Victoria 3 as Portugal. If you just jump in on the British market, then you don't really need to build anything other than ports. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun, honestly. But it's also just like an enormous buff to free trade in regards to how subjects should interact with it. Because we are going to have some disgustingly huge trade centers in like 10 years. So look forward to that. Let me know if you still have any questions in regards to any of those subjects that we discussed. I think Turmoil, Trade, and Infamy are all interconnected in a way that you kind of do need to discuss them together. But I know we didn't cover any of them in like extreme detail. That's due in part to the fact that I've done videos about them before, and if you have really fine questions, then I would just refer you to those. But I do think that this change in regards to Turmoil makes me more excited to play 1.2 than almost any other change that they've implemented. Because that, hand in hand with your ability to do trade as a subject, means that you really don't have to map paint by declaring war anymore. Now, I think actually you are going to want to be doing a whole bunch of bankrolling and protectorates and custom unions and stuff. So I feel pretty smart for having just played Her Majesty's Government. That was good practice, I guess. All right. That's Walker. Take care.